Oh, this is so exciting. Welcome, welcome once again to another edition of For Those Who Believe, this beautiful podcast that brings all of us together. Brooke LeClaire from Colorado, another daughter of the Casa that we love so much and that has been such a big part of the Casa over the years. And recently we did get to meet each other in Brazil, which was so exciting because time flies. And I also always want to thank João de Dias for bringing us together because without his mission, we wouldn't be talking. And we are part of a big, huge Casa family from all over the world, more than 55 nations. And it's just been one hell of a journey, really, from when we first arrived here. But what I want to get to the bottom of is how you found out about the Casa, what took you there, Brooke, and how it changed you forever.
Yeah. So I was studying clairvoyant techniques for a long time in Boulder, Colorado, and then I was working with a teacher in Mount Shasta. And I was working with a man named Michael Tamora. And so Michael had this strange illness, and it was a little bit like gout, where he couldn't walk and he was starting to use crutches. And it was a little bit like Crohn's disease, where he was not able to keep anything in his system. So he was just whittling away using these crutches. And he's this amazing spiritual teacher. So he went to the Kaza. And when he came back, I saw him about 3 months after he had come back from the Kaza, and his color was back. He wasn't using crutches, and he had all of these amazing stories about the entities of light and how the energetics of the Kaza worked. And
Mm.
so at that time, we were learning how to maintain consciousness as our spirit leaves our body. So it was the perfect training for mediumship. So
Yeah.
what he would do is he would run us through these exercises, and he would have us leave our body, and in spirit, we would travel to the healing hospital that they call Nasolar. And so sometimes we would watch the healings that would occur with the souls. There was like a little viewing deck that we would go to, and we would have our adventure, and then we would come back in our body, and he would call on us and have us report back.
Mm.
So that was so much fun, and it was
Yeah.
so interesting. And he brought back all of these books. There's a book there are Chico Xavier books. So one was Nasolar, and one was about And Life Goes On it was a story
Mm.
beautiful story about a woman who's a kind of abusive husband who cheats on her. Once she goes to heaven, she learns as a soul that whole story, and it's so beautiful and healing. So that
Wow.
was my introduction, and I loved it, and I wanted to practice that new tool. So just on my own in my meditation, I kept going to the healing hospital, just in spirit. Every
Mm.
day I would go there. And so years passed, and lots of my friends, when Michael taught me, maybe there were 150 people at one time. We were
Wow.
yeah, we were learning all these healing techniques. And through the years, several of my friends went, and my photo was presented, and I had herbs. And so I had a little introduction to the entities and the energy of them. But maybe it was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years afterwards when I actually got to have my first trip there. And
Wow.
I went to the Tuesday night orientation that Diego would give. And
Yeah.
afterwards, he came up to me and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, it's my first trip. I'm at the orientation, right?" And he goes, "You've been here many times." And so
Wow.
I was like, no, I haven't. But in spirit, I think we had already been connecting. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it was beautiful.
Mhm.
So my first day there, I get in front of the entity. I think I was with Diego. I don't remember exactly. I
Mm.
come up in front of the entity, and many years later, I find out that it was Dr. Augusto. But his eyes went big, and he did this, and he stood up out of the chair. This
My
was my
God.
very first interaction with Medium Joao. And he was making some energy in my space go away.
Oh,
Dr. Augusto was eliminating something that wasn't so good for me.
mm,
And then
mm.
I went and got a little blessing afterwards. And I was like a little chicken with my head cut off. I was like, the energy was so high. I didn't know what hit me. I didn't know what happened. So the next
Mm.
morning, I sat in current. And then the next afternoon, I was prescribed the Kaza crystals, the male and
Wow.
female crystals.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that changed everything for me. So, back in that day, they were prescribed, and I know later on people could just ask for them and they could
yeah,
buy them. But at that point, one of the translators worked with me every day, and he told me how to take care of the crystals, how to clean them, how to sit with them. He would have me sit in a special place during current so that he could come kind of check on me if he needed to, and he would give me little assignments. So I had little sayings or mantras to say when I first sat down, just to help me focus and to help me allow the entities to help me in the highest, kind of in the highest way.
lovely.
It was so beautiful. And so
Yeah,
on that first trip, everyone was so welcoming, and it felt like I knew them already, even though um, it was my first time being there or seeing any of them.
yeah.
And I had this little download. I thought, well, this is what home feels like. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Just so beautiful and loving. And so in my thinking, I thought, I will do anything to stay here.
Yes.
And then you fast forward, I don't know what it was, 3, 4 years, and then I was able to live there. So on the first trip, I extended my trip. I just loved it, loved it, loved it. I extended it as long as I could.
Yeah.
It was so hard to leave. I wasn't sure how I would ever be able to get back. And then I was back 4 months later for the second trip.
Wow.
And that is that whole thing where the entities keep calling you back. And then the rules kind of change, and it doesn't become about, I need to save money to go to this foreign country. Things just happen that allow you,
Exactly.
yeah, that allow you to go there.
It's almost like they open the gates for you, and suddenly you either have a windfall or somebody says something, and next thing you know, or you see this flight that's like super cheap. And then next thing you know, you're back in Abidjan in the Casa. I mean, they do that. That's not humanly ordained by any means. If they want you back in the Casa, they will get you there, as you know, because I saw you a lot there. And when you were, even when you were living there, you were living for extended periods of time. So you were just part of all of the Casa family. I mean, you were us, we were all family. So we never saw like, we were all in it together. There was you, America, me, Ireland, there were Brazilians or Australians, but we were all the same family. We weren't different. We were just doing the work of the entities and the work of the God consciousness. And then, and when you were living there, I remember you bringing groups. We mentioned that before. When did you start bringing groups then?
I would say 2000. 2011, I believe. Maybe it might have been the end of 2010.
Yeah,
So I knew I was kind of making steps to prepare to spend longer periods of time. I knew I would need to earn income. And so it seemed like if I was guiding, that was going to be the best way for me to
exactly.
actually be able to stay there for a longer time, while also extending how I was of being of service. So I was starting to get a lot of training around being a medium, but part
Mm,
of which we all know being a medium is being of service and helping others. So that
exactly.
was that other part of, the thing that we do. Yeah.
Yeah. And it unfolds naturally. It's not like, I know the Casa is a school, it's like the University of Life. And every day we're learning so many lessons, some of them not so easy. But it just unfolded so organically that, it wasn't like we were studying as such. The entities were just guiding us on and on. And through the service, you nailed it right there. And that's the first time anybody has said that on this podcast, that the service was what made us the mediums, the channels. It was actually being in service, which was something we were doing organically because we wanted to serve. And in the rooms, as you know, in the entities room, it was the words of Tom Ignacio, you know, in love, in all things to love and serve for the greater glory of God. So that's what we were doing. And I noticed you because your groups, like you didn't have piles of people, but you were very attentive to the people that you did have. And I noticed um, with some group leaders, you in particular, people who were with you literally not only physically changed their appearance over time, because I was seeing people on the first day in the current room coming in with you or whatever, but they seem to have changed fundamentally in the short time that they were there with you. And I noticed it with some group leaders, but I noticed it with you because you were fully 100% engaged with your people. I mean,
Well,
you were
thank
there in service. Well, not that everybody was there for, I know we need finances to keep us afloat or whatever, but your service was obvious. I think
you.
the people you brought, whether they were, I don't even think that not necessarily more evolved or whatever, but they were very much in the moment and in the current doing their work. There was never any, I never had to talk to you about anybody who in your groups, because some people in groups, they were nervous or it was a first time, or maybe you were just bringing people or you orientated them better. But some people, I'd say, oh, you have a group leader. That's weird. But I never came across any of your group at all coming up to me saying, how do you do this, that, and the other? So I don't know that. I think that's a credit to you. Um, and I remember them looking different, which is very, it's a strange thing to notice. I mean, I noticed a lot in that first current room because I would see people walking through for the very first time quite nervously or looking around or whatever. And then 2 weeks later, or sometimes 3 weeks later, the same person would not actually look the same, which is weird but true. So, whatever you were doing to them in the evening, or just you seem to be part of their process rather than, some group leader saying, oh, it's my day off. And I'm like,
No.
there is no day off ever, you know?
The entities would work through me. And I think what you are actually seeing is the effect of that. It's like a process of channeling where they're working through me and I'm transmitting some sort of words or energy or love or support, however that translates for people. And then that's so neat. I hadn't known that before, but you were seeing the effect of that. Yeah, which isn't me. It's just that synergy of allowing that to come through. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's like a surrendering almost because it's happening on a very high level. And they're using your energy field and the people who are new-ish to this work um, with you as like the shepherdess. I know it's the Lamb of God and all that, but it just seemed like it flowed so naturally. It wasn't that you were lecturing them every night. I mean, I did see some group leaders sit their guys down and, questions and answers, which is great. And people have different ways of doing things. But I just noticed that your groups were very flowing and they weren't the ones that were coming up asking me anything at all. And they weren't the ones in the current who were, they just seemed more if you like. I don't even know if that's the right word. They just seemed more prepared, which
Interesting.
is, yeah. And then you did bring groups for a number of years. I
Hmm.
mean, quite a lot of groups.
Hmm.
I remember those groups coming, and then there were lots of other groups that were like 30, 40. There was a group from Sao Paulo with 50 people, and I was like eye rolling regularly because I was thinking, oh my God. I mean, she was a great guide or whatever, but it just seemed like an awful lot of people for one person. Um, and we all worked as a team anyway. It didn't matter. I mean, to me, so long as everybody was getting the healing they were there for, that was the most important thing. And I think
Yeah.
that was the beauty of the Casa, that even when your buttons were pushed by people, I learned to recognize very early on, because I'm from a kind of a big Irish family, that that's a teaching. Your buttons are being pushed, so you're like, whoa, hang on a minute. What am I learning here? I mean, I have to not react, be equanimous, be compassionate, and and understand that there is a teaching here.
And that
And
that is one of the beautiful things about being there, because in the world I live in, you can avoid that. You can get on your devices, you can talk to people, you can overwork, you can do a million different things. But as we are stuck there, literally in current from 2 to sometimes 6 hours with our anger or our grudge or our sadness, like that is a very long period of time to work through things. And sometimes you're there for a whole week working through those things before they'll shift, or even longer. But the point is that you couldn't really get away from it. Um, I'll just say I couldn't get away from it because the entities would make it so in my face, front and center, that I needed to work through it. I'm sure someone could have avoided it, but the way that they work with me,
mm,
I had to deal with it. I had to do the forgiveness work. I had to see what I was projecting onto someone. That was my process, just stepping it up step by step by step. And then on the other side of that, you have more awareness, you have more freedom, you have more joy, you have more to offer. I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
yeah, and not forgetting the fun either, because I often saw you laughing. Um, we laughed together, and I often saw the joy. Whereas with some other groups, they just seem leaders, they seem to be getting bogged down in a lot of the grungy stuff because so much stuff comes up, as you know. But I remember hearing your laughter a lot more than other people. And I'm not comparing that with other group leaders. I'm just saying that you somehow made this lightness. Um, and there was a lot of smiling and laughter because that multiplies this very high vibration. And, you know, it was noticeable. Because you were one of the lighter, uh, and I mean that. in metaphorically as well as literally, one of the lighter group leaders that we enjoyed seeing coming because we knew that, as me being there all the time in the Casa, that there would be less um, uh, uh, problems. I mean, everybody has problems, but that there would just be less work for us to be doing because you were there and you were lightening things up a lot, you know?
Well, and I had that clairvoyant training. I had 9 years of using clairvoyant energy tools before I got to the Kaza. So that teaches you how to ground. I would help my whole group to ground. You use different tools to help them clear their fear or their anger or whatever they're coming in with,
Yeah.
and just to be more present and allow that energy, because the energy, that beautiful healing energy, that's where the miracles come in.
Yeah. And it was a magnet for miracles, because people seemed more prepared um, in your energy with you and in your energy field. And maybe that's why you were less high maintenance than others because your groups were already, as you were saying, grounded and also in the spirit of joy too. I mean, there was a lot of heavy um, problems that we were dealing with. I mean, nothing was easy, and yet um, your groups were always just flowing. There was no sort of, even when you were coming through in the lines, there was never a sort of, oh, we're going to have to be picking people up off the ground now because you had already gone through with them to keep their eyes open or whatever. So it was easier on us as volunteers in the Casa um, for you to have your groups very well orientated. And then you were never off duty. Even, when your groups went off to have their interventions and stuff, you were there. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm having some time off, so I take a break at all.
I'm like a sucker. That place is like a magnet for me. And when I am so attracted to the energy of the entities. I
Hmm.
I love them. And when I'm there, all the whole time I was working and living there, I felt like I was doing what I came on the planet to do.
Wow.
And so one of the things I've really learned about, how it's changed my life is that there is this beautiful, benevolent energy that is so wise and loving and kind. And it wants to be with us. It wants to communicate with us. It wants to help us. And if I get a little quantum, I love quantum healing and quantum science and quantum physics. And to get a little quantum with it, it is, we are part of it. And as we allow it to come through us, it starts to change who we are. It starts to change our frequency. It starts to change how we relate to the world. And that is how anything is possible. So we become these amazing creators as we're
Mm.
co-creating with that beautiful energy that at the Casa we called love. Some people might call it your higher self or the quantum field or God. But it
Yeah.
was about that energy of relating and allowing it to help and heal us and allowing us to flow that energy through us to help ourselves and others. So that was
Yeah.
it for me. That was it for me. Yeah.
And then you kept bringing groups right up until, was it 2018, when the problems of the Casa happened? You were still bringing groups up until then, over
Well,
all those years.
over all of the years. And on the it was so interesting. So in October of 2017, I went for my last trip. And in the last maybe 2016 and 17, I think it was undeniable. We were all feeling an aggression and things were just escalating and getting,
Obviously.
it was hard. It wasn't as lovable to be there. It was getting, we still had the beautiful connections with
Mm,
our other brothers and sisters at the Kaza, stronger than ever. But there were
mm,
all these other energies that people were noticing. And guests that I had, clients would say, you know, the volunteers don't seem very happy. Or this is supposed to be healing energy. Like, look at these, people, maybe being disrespectful or, just all kinds of things that
yes.
weren't part of the earlier years were starting to happen. And so
Yeah.
I went for a personal healing in October of 2017. And then I brought my mom and one of her girlfriends to have a healing for her. So after all of those years, my last trip, and I set this as an intention that I'm not going to live in Abadiania anymore. I'm going to sell all my things. I'm going to get this healing for my family, and then I'm going to go live back in the United States. And
Wow.
so mom and I had this beautiful healing, and she just changed and healed so much. It was such a wonderful ending for us. And we flew out just a little bit before Thanksgiving, so maybe the second or third week of November. And
Mm.
then the scandal happened in what, maybe 3 weeks, beginning of December, something like that.
Yeah, it was in December, beginning of December 2018. And it was almost, it reached an apex because there were so many people coming to the Casa. Everything was loud and chaotic. There were lines everywhere. There were lines for the current. There were lines for the bookstore. There were lines for the everywhere, kitchen, everywhere. I mean, it was almost like on a Tuesday night. I always had to have a massage with Luciana, and I had to have a special um, a closing of my energy field in the back of my neck. And I had to be prepared for the Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays because it had become so heaving. And not everybody was there. Um, you know, a bit of finance was creeping into, things were there was a lot of money being changed hands. Things were sort of upshifting, and yet the undercurrent of the entities was always there. I always felt safe. Um, but on a Wednesday morning, I used to go down, people would be starting lining up at 6 a.m. and they couldn't even get into the current because there were so many people. But I would have this feeling of almost not dread, but this in my gut, I would just think this is going to be a long 3 days. And this was happening from about 2000, late 2016 through 2017. And in 2018, it started to get very um, real and poignant and quite stressful because I was having this feeling of, oh my God, we have to face 3,500 people on a regular basis. And they weren't all happy not to be able to get into the current, and they travel a long way. And some people who were used to having the lesser amount of people, because some people came back after a few years and realized the Casa had changed. It had expanded. It was physically huge. And, there was loads of people lining up for Passiflora and stuff. So it was changing as far as the eyes could see. Yet the entity's energy was so supporting and holding us in this energy, saying this is necessary for the evolvement of the Kaza, and I kept feeling that and I kept getting that in the current, even though the lines, as you know, there were 6 hour currents and the lines were just non-stop. And There was a lot more work to do. But underneath all of that were the entities holding us in this really high evolving energy. They just kept saying there's an upshift happening. Uh, be prepared. This is the beginning of the upshift of the planet. It started, I saw it in Abidjan before I saw it in the world, because every time I come back to Ireland, everybody was like, "Ah," this was way before the pandemic. But I could see that there was some big shift happening. And then when the medium disappeared off to prison, 2019 was a nice sort of a slowing down of the energy, well, of the people, basically. You notice the people not coming, but the energy was upshifting, and it was very feminine in 2019. I think it was balancing out that whole machismo and the Brazilian machismo energy. But then, bang, when the pandemic hit, it was a relief because gone were the thousands of people, and there was nothing left but peace and birds and toucans. And it was just fantastic. I mean, I really enjoyed the pandemic in Brazil because we were in this. I knew that that the Casa had shifted into. I don't even. Can't even say fifth dimension because I don't even know what that means. I just knew that it had gone into orbit and that it was never going back to this physical world. It was where it was supposed to be, and it's still upshifting as we're speaking now. And every time I go back there, I was there, you were there this year as well. It ain't coming back down. It's just going up and up and up. And it's amazing how secure and safe we are and how nothing can harm a hair on our heads. It's like there's nothing to fear at all. It's amazing. This battle that's happening on the spiritual planes. Archangel Michael's pretty busy and stuff. I'm seeing feathers everywhere. I was telling you that. All over the world here on the physical world. But there's an unholy battle on Earth. But there's always been battles and wars because we just never had the internet. And I'm really lighting candles for all of our brothers and sisters all the time because you never dampen the darkness. You light the candle, you multiply the light, stay in the center, and you pray. And everything is in divine order. So we're not in fear. But my God, having a place like the Casa and other portals on the planet, the portal of the Casa is so high that there's nothing is going to stop God or whoever you perceive God to be. Nothing is going to stop the triumph of the light over the darkness. It's going to it's happening already, even if you can't see it. And
I
you were
have been,
there
yeah,
February. This
yeah, I was back. I've been back two times since things shifted.
brilliant.
First was October of 23, and then this February of 25.
Wow.
And I agree, the energy is off the charts. And there's maybe 10 people in current. And so you're just, the first time in October, the entities were having me run each bit of current. So I was running what would have been first time line, second time line, 2 o'clock line, or 8 o'clock line, revision, operation, and as a medium, you're like, oh, shift gears, do this, clear this, shift the energy this way. And it was a lot of energy channeling through me. It was a lot of energy channeling through me because there weren't very many experienced mediums working at that time.
Yeah.
And then in this last trip in February, there were more people. And so I kind of went back to my normal, like, where they'll just knock you out for a while, and then you
Yes.
come on and you do whatever your skill is, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Beautiful. But I had this incredible brain surgery. on my last week. And the
Really?
entity, while I was sitting in current, the entities took out what they were calling an obstruction. And it looked like just visually, it looked like a little rectangle that was placed in the brain between the left and right hemispheres. And
Wow.
that had been creating some kind of limitation in the way that I perceive the world and in just in my experience of being me in the world. And I have to say, since that has come out, everything is changing. For
Wow.
everything is changing for me. So my vibration has skyrocketed. I think codes came on. The DNA is working better. I'm getting like we're connecting. I'm connecting more with my Kaza family. So the people that are like-minded are we're flocking together. There's an energy that is kind of bringing us together. Just like living in Abidjania, the synchronicities are starting to happen, even though we're in the 3D world where nothing's working anymore. Despite that, these synchronicities are starting to, yeah. And the entities are loud and clear with me, loud and clear. And I do a practice I call running energy, and I've done it. I think I learned that in 2000. So for 25 years, that's been my meditation practice. And
Hmm.
since coming to the Casa the first time in 2009, the entities have become part of my team. They're part of my
Yeah,
team. And
great.
now when I work with people, I give clairvoyant readings and healings, and I do something called biodynamic craniosacral therapy. And then I'll mix the two for some people. And so in
Excellent.
all, oh, and I'm an animal communicator too. And so in all of my work, the entities come in and they guide me and they give instructions for that specific person. So if you and I would work together, your team, whoever your entities are that you are really attracted to, and
Mhm.
my team, and whatever the collaboration that would be best for you would come together to offer you the most guidance. And now they're channeling through me. So
Wow.
that has been a beautiful integration of like the culmination of all of these years. And so
Mhm.
all of that has skyrocketed since this little last trip with this operation. And it's changing everything. Just like, just to circle back around to the beginning of the conversation, that's the
Mhm.
entities changing everything. Like the rules, the it's becoming like the rules are changing of what reality is and how we define it. There's a
Mhm.
plasticity towards how the universe is being created. And it's
Wow.
really, really fun to be in the middle of that, right?
Yeah, so your work now um, in the world, Colorado is just where you are based, but you're doing it for the world. So you're working the world or the universe, as we call it. Um, how it has, it sounds like, and you can tell me if I'm right, that it has really upped the ante for you and um, raised your vibration to such a high level that you're resonating not on the physical plane as much as we were, we're sitting in the current, but that in 2025 you're now working with this really high energy field.
Well, I would say yes, yes, absolutely. And I would say I and all of us are becoming more multidimensional. So in spirit, we've always had that connection with the entities and the God part of us, the divine part of us. Um, but for whatever reason, the limitations that kept me separate here and then going there have left. And I can have both of them while I'm grounded in my body, talking to you on the telephone or, in a
Mm,
session while you're on the table. So that has become really fun. That's really, really wonderful.
great.
Yeah,
So that is a really big shift
it's a really big shift.
energetically
It
um, over the last not that many years because we forget. It just seems like ages ago since the pandemic and whatever, but it
Yeah,
isn't that long ago. And
no.
suddenly the world has, uh, I mean, I don't even know what the words to use are, upshifted perhaps. Um, every time I go back to the Casa, I literally feel like I'm walking on air. I I go down to the waterfall and I go, what? Wow. And I do the rosary as well, and I feel like I'm getting nosebleeds, which only happened rarely when the entity was incorporated, say King Solomon, which was very rare, or I remember John the Baptist being incorporated once, and I thought I thought I was going to, I felt like I was getting a nosebleed because there was so much pressure on my pituitary here.
Oh
And
my
he
goodness.
sent everybody to the waterfall because I had to stay in the current. But it was so high. I was sure I was going to get this massive nosebleed. And this is what I'm getting now when I go to the Casa, like going to the waterfall or the rosary. Like I just close my eyes and this whole it starts, and I'm thinking, and I have to check every so often that there isn't blood coming out of my nose, but I just feel this massive, um, highest energy in my in my pituitary gland, but in my third eye. It's hard to explain because other people feel it differently or whatever. And I just find it extraordinary that me, who is just your average, comedian, if you like, going to Abidjania and then suddenly getting upgraded to this, these energy levels that I never thought possible in my lifetime, and not even to be able to talk naturally to you about it, because I love what you put on your social media. You never put anything that isn't extremely educational and spot on. You nail it. And it makes total sense to me about the cosmos. And, for us to be able to speak in layman's terms about it now, and for you to even say that, that you're going back to Abidjania, you're really getting upgraded into this cosmic force. It's hard to explain. And even you look exactly like you did when I met you first, but you're much more clear, like your eyes, your whole demeanor is just beaming this high, high vibration that
Thank you.
you had, back in the day when you arrived first, but now you've really come into, like, it's just this shining. I don't know where my sunglasses are, but I nearly need a pair of sunglasses because what you just described is you're literally merging with a cosmic energy, which might sound insane to those who are not well familiar with the Casa work, but certainly the entities are beaming out this amazing high energy. I mean, you can see it in your eyes. I just see it. And what you are putting out there, um, it's like upgrading all the time. Like you're teaching us in normal language. You mean you don't need to have these big words or whatever, but what you're putting down is all useful, but it's very simply put and it's very easy to understand. And it's about this massive shift in consciousness. And you're at the helm of that because you are putting it out there for people to interpret it. Um, and it's plain, it doesn't really even need a translation because you're speaking English, and it's very simple words. You don't need to go on about, I don't know what people are talking about now, but you're really getting the point across that we are in the middle, and actually slap bang in the middle of this extraordinary, it's an amazing time to be on the earth.
It is a lot of change, a lot of change.
all the time, Brooke. I mean,
It's
every
constant.
day.
Yes.
Sometimes I really just have to stop in the supermarket and before I even open my mouth and ask anybody where anything is, I just have to take a few deep breaths because I feel like I'm walking on another planet. And sometimes, and maybe you feel this, and I'd like you to share if you do, then I'm actually not even like maybe they don't even see me, or not that I'm not seen. It's just that when I open my mouth, I just have to make a proper sentence, Grainne. Don't go off on a spiritual path right now, and I just try to be me, you know. But sometimes I find myself saying things and people are going, what are you talking about? A shift or the world's gone to the dogs or whatever. And I'm like, it's great to be alive. And they're like, what a terrible life.
Yeah. What are you talking about? One of the tools I've used is I've learned to read the room. So you have to see who your audience is. And so in doing that, I've become very quiet. I'm very quiet. And if I can tell that they're not in a good space, I avert my eyes and I do little prayer hands as I walk by. And if they are willing to engage anymore, a smile and a hello, like it goes so far. It
Yeah.
goes so
Keep
Oh,
it
I did,
simple.
yeah, keep it simple. I did want to mention something that happened, which is a really interesting thing. So when I was at the Kaza, or when I was living in Abidjania and at the Kaza every day, I was getting ready to live at Lynn Lannon's house, which
Yeah.
people may remember Lynn. I was taking care of her kitties in her house. And so Lynn said, "Oh, I have this old bicycle. If you know anyone who wants to buy a bicycle, let me know." And within days, Gary Weinberger came into town and he said, "Hey, do you know anyone who would have a bicycle?" And I said, I just happen to know the person. And I walked him over to Lynn Lannon's house, and Gary got his bicycle. And so what ended up happening is very frequently somebody would come to me and say, "Hey, I want to rent out a room." And within days, sometimes I would just walk down the street towards Fruities, and the next person would say, "Do you know where I can get a rental? I'd like to just rent a room." Or the next trip, "I'd like to get a rental house," or this kind of thing. And so the entities kept putting me in this role of being like a connector. And it was never for me, it was always in service to other people. And it happened so much of the time that I realized that that is one of the things that I naturally, inherently, that they brought up, that I naturally can do, I have the capacity for, but it has to be in service in others. And so moving forward into the world now, what I would like to do is to use that ability as a connector to just remind everyone who's listening, if you have some money, I know Grania has a PayPal on her. Tell me what your YouTube site is for those who believe.
I this podcast is for those who believe, a podcast by Grainne McEntee. And I've had this channel before, but that's the podcast name that if you put it in, it comes up. I did put a PayPal button there, and I forgot to mention it to people because when I'm in Ireland, I don't have an opportunity to work, as you know, and then and in Abidjan it's rare as well, and everything has gone so sky high. And I'm just waiting for my next instructions to see um what are the next moves that I need to make. But I'm just in waiting, like I'm in service. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter to me. But yeah, if people want to donate, thank you, Brooke, for reminding me because I always forget to tell
Yeah.
everybody. And it's a button that's on the top of the actual for those who believe, a podcast by Grainne McEntee. And it does help a lot. And I have been paying my taxes all these years, believe it or not. So the tax man's happy. But also, now I'm kind of in a um, not limbo. I just feel I'm living and it's great. Life is great. I know it's always raining in Ireland, that's why it's so green. But I'm also waiting for my next instructions, which could bring me back to Abidjania at the end of July, because I know it's Dom Ignacio's time and there's people already sending me messages saying they'll be there or not. I'm not sure because I am waiting for them to actually lead me on. But a few quid would always help. So thank you.
Always. Yeah, and if you don't have money, do a kind gesture. If you can't, if you're not near people, you don't want to do a kind gesture, offer a smile. Tell that lady in the grocery store, like, hello, thank you. I think these little things, just helping each other as we can. I just think more and more of that is so important as we move forward because
That is a
people,
beautiful thing
they're having
because
a time. They're having a hard time.
a really hard time. And, even yesterday I saw a little kid with little ankle socks with bobbins on it. And I went, oh my God, your socks are gorgeous. And the kid was like giggling and laughing. And the mum was so happy because she obviously put a lot of effort into the little kiddie's socks. And I just automatically, like a child myself, just went, oh my God, I really dig those socks. It's pity they're not in adult sizes. And that was spontaneous because I love to see that. And I love to see people, and you're right, spontaneity like that changes people's days and
I'm
it
sure it
makes
made
them
his week.
happy.
Yeah, I'm sure it made that little boy's week, right?
Yeah,
And the
absolutely. And
mom saw that and her efforts were seen. Her efforts were rewarded.
yeah, and
Made a
even some
difference.
people who I just say, oh, I really like your hairband, or, I always compliment people. And there was a lady watering flowers the other day on my street, and I said, thank you. These flowers are beautiful. Every time I pass them, I love them. And then there's roses up the street, and I'm just waiting for the person who planted those roses because I want to give them a hug. Because I have my head stuck in the roses every time. I pass it like twice a day. And I was there with my niece yesterday, and we had our head in every rose, and they're huge. So we were like, and they smell real, like, the ones in the stores don't seem real, but they're simple, those simple acts, random acts of kindness are just really important. You're right. It's something so simple that'll change the world.
It goes a long way. Yeah, it
Yeah.
goes.
And that is a beautiful point to finish on because we are coming up to time now. And I love you, as you know, and I've always loved you from the minute I saw you. You're my sister. And I'm so delighted that you said yes to being interviewed because I know you're busy and I know that you're changing the world one person at a time. And I just you nailed a few things there that I hadn't an opportunity to talk to other people about. And this is the beauty of the Casa, where we are all different and yet the same family. And something resonates with somebody who may not be having the best of days or maybe looking for a little bit of guidance. And you nailed so many things there that even for me, now I'm armed again with more ammunition for love. And it's just being able to talk to you. I love the internet. I know people give out about it, but for this, it's so crucial that we keep the connection. And I look forward very much to seeing you, whether it be in Abidjania or not. I did want to drive around the United States because I got my Irish license in February, but then I think there's a few problems, what to say the least. So I might just wait a little bit because I don't want to be stopped by the chips or, a highway patrol. But you never know. I don't really have any fear. I've nothing to hide. I mean, I'd be interesting to go to San Salvador for a while. But
It was a
no,
fun adventure. Yeah, it would be
I
a
don't
fun.
think I don't have any fear. I know that if the entities want to send me driving around all my friends like Diana Solva did, she really inspired me 2 years ago. She drove around the United States in a beat up car and went to visit all her friends. And
I
that's
got to
what I
see
want
her.
to do.
I got
Yeah, and
to
that's
see
what
her.
I want
She
to
gave me
do. And
yeah,
nothing can stop me from doing that. No, no higher power of any description can stop me doing that, and I will be protected all the way.
yes, you will. And let us know if we get the reunion together, if they said it, I want to go. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And somebody said Easter, which I'm not sure where it is next year. I'll have a look and I can put it up. But I think Dom Ignacio Day was always really, really special because it was then that we had all those different languages welcome all the sons and daughters of the Casa. And there was 55 nations there that day, and I think even more since that. So perhaps Dom Ignacio in July. It just depends. It will come together. I have a really good feeling about this, and I think that we could all just, you know, have so much fun and work together, and it would really lift the vibration of the planet as well.
I
So
agree.
thank you, Brooke, from
Thank
my
you.
heart to yours. And we'll get it together. Nothing is impossible to God. I got Rita here with me. So we'll talk soon.
Okay.
A little
Thank you
heart.
so much.
Thank you, darling. That's so gorgeous.